All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you everybody for coming. I'd like to remind everybody that if you wish to speak on an agenda item, please wait for an invitation from the board chair during that discussion. For comments on other school district matters, you may speak during the designated public comment period. Before speaking, state your name and keep remarks brief. Respectful conduct is expected at all times, and the chair may interrupt or end comments that are too long, off-topic, inappropriate, or violate personal privacy rights. This is a school board business meeting held in a public setting. Thank you for your cooperation in keeping it professional and on track. We've called to order. We have recited the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we'll move on to number 2, which is to review and adopt this agenda. Move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a first and a second to adopt this here agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose? Perfect. Moving on. Next item is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to share brief comments of no more than 3 minutes on matters not listed on the agenda. Legal issues and complaints should follow the grievance process outlined in policy 1700. The board will not respond to comments during the meeting as it is a role to listen and consider public input rather than engage in discussion. Is there any public comment at this time? Wonderful. Moving on to item number 4, which are our discussion items for this evening. The first of which is to discuss strategic planning with Ms. Hackman-Littman. Get there. Perfect. Should we bump that down?
Can you hear us, Adam?
Yeah, I can. Good evening, everyone. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Hi, Hackman. Can you guess who this is?
I think that's Chair Fredette. Is that right?
It's true. It's good to see you tonight.
Good to see you too. I hope that I don't look too much like 1984.
You look just right on a Zoom meeting tonight. So we've put this strategic plan that you have sent us, the proposal for that, on our agenda tonight to, in my mind, have kind of the final discussion on that and then put it to a vote. Are you available for questions from the audience, should we have any?
Yes, sir, I am. And because I can't see anything, I hope that if there are questions from the audience or from different board members, you could just let me know who's speaking before you ask your question.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So just to kind of recap where we've gone and kind of where we are tonight, we had several emergency board meetings earlier in the year to discuss kind of our pillars as we see them as a board, moving forward as a board for Alberton School and just where Alberton School moves into the future. We've spent a lot of time discussing I'd say financial likelihoods, probabilities in terms of funding, our current state of affairs as it pertains to the budget. And in a lot of those discussions, we did bring up the topic of enlisting a strategic planner to help us move forward, just to kind of see where we fit and how we remain relevant in the growth that this valley is projected to see, maybe first in the next 10 years and then potentially moving on to the next 30 years. And we have obvious reasons to believe that that growth is going to be significant. So we identified Hatton as a great candidate to do this strategic planning with, just based on her history as a strategic planner, but then also in her role with Missoula County as it would pertain to the strategic that is occurring right now surrounding the development that is beginning out at the Y. And so, a lot of you guys are here, but just to recap, Ms. Lippman came in, she discussed kind of her views on strategic planning and how she would propose to move forward if she were selected as somebody that we would partner with. And after that discussion, we all voted unanimously to have Hatton give us a proposal, a bid. And in front of us, we have that bid. We've looked at it now for a couple months. So you are here for the culmination of all of that. So thanks for coming. Do we have any questions from anybody in attendance?
Chairman Fredette,
Yes.
Patton is saying that she's having trouble hearing, so we might want to use the microphone if people are going to have questions or anything like that, so she can hear it a little bit better. Patton, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Superintendent Elbow.
Okay, so we may have to speak louder.
I just moved it closer to.
Oh, thanks, Betsy. I'm so sorry. I know this is a challenge to connect remotely like this.
I'll make sure you know when there's a question.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions from folks in the room? Anything from board members? That wants to ruminate over it, so. Okay. Before we move forward on this, Hatton, do you care to, oh, excuse me, this is Ray. Do you care to discuss kind of anything that, any details that went into your proposal and maybe anything that you've identified to this point as we can move forward?
Sure, you bet. So this proposal details both my experience doing strategic plans as a member of the superintendent's cabinet at Missoula County Public Schools, as well as strategic plans that I've led as a facilitator through my business, Surf HL. I just want to pause. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great. So the way that I'm framing it up in terms of the phases, first we have to learn more about your community. And that involves a survey effort that I would lead, interviews that I would conduct, one-on-one or in small conversations like a coffee group or something like that. And then the creation of this strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we get all this data in the first phase, and that's important so we know what is our current reality, and a little bit what are our hopes and dreams that get identified in those opportunities. I had a chance to have a quick conversation with Chair Fredette, and I do want to clarify the way that phase will be conducted with the most potential is really in partnership with your superintendent and with you as members of the board, recommending to me who are those leaders in your community, who are those long-term events, who represent a broad range of your community, so that we can make sure I'm getting in touch with the folks that you recommend I speak with. And then, of course, Betsy would be helping with outsourced data lists from your current student body, as well as those families who are choosing to attend school outside of the Albertson School District. So that's a real partnership to make sure that phase is done well. Then we move into ideation, and that's where we're doing a lot of in-person meetings with your community in the room you're sitting in now. I would still be leading those meetings, but I would be creating flyers and maybe informational email blurbs, and if you're using a texting platform, I can create blurbs for that as well, to help you recruit people to make sure people show up and are engaged in those events. And then we get into the phase where we're more drafting. So we've gone through discovery and ideation, where we hear everything the community wants, as well as needs, to maybe meet those reasons why families are heading down the road to other school districts. When we get into the drafting phase, we take all of that input, and I would be working with your new superintendent and the existing staff to actually create SMART goals and say, hey, we've gotten our large priority areas from the board and the community. How are we going to implement those things? How are we actually going to measure if we accomplish them? And how are we going to make sure that they're realistic and that they're time-bound in reasonable timeframes? Then it's a bit of handing it over to the board for a presentation, which I would join your superintendent and staff to make, and then the board would adopt the strategic plan. I also wrote into the proposal what I highly recommend are check-in meetings, 6 months to 1 year to 2 years following the adoption of the plan. And that helps with accountability strategies and also adjustment. If we created some goals in that plan that we're having a hard time meeting, then we can discuss that with the board and say what needs to be adjusted or what other resources are necessary to accomplish what we set out to do. So that's the plan in high level. And based on the difference in time between when I first proposed this and now, what I was going to suggest to you is that if the board approves this expenditure tonight and approves contracting with my business, I would love to have some planning time with your new superintendent, Ms. Sear, so that we could really articulate a timeline that's going to work for her as she's coming on board and work for the board and meet your needs.
And this is Ray again, what would that look like? Just a kind of a different start time so that you can kind of come in together?
Yes, sir. So, the original calendar that I gave you, we're way past that, right? Because originally we were gonna start at the beginning of the year. So, based on some blocks and time in my business schedule, what I would wanna do is work with Ms. Sear to say, okay, when can we start that research phase and do it to the best of our ability? And then based on her first 100 days, she's just coming on board as well. So does it make sense to plan those community meetings where we're getting that input in phase 2? Does it make sense to do those around back to school timeline? Or maybe you guys tell me, oh, our Alberton community, we don't travel a lot in the summer, we'll be able to get a good group of people in June or July. Then we can go with that. But my professional experience has been, it can be challenging to get people to participate in that community engagement phase during the summer break time.
Sure. Any thoughts on that? Well, I sure like it. It makes a lot of sense for you and Ms. Sear to kind of come together because, of course, she is a huge part of our strategic plan as we currently know it. So, yeah, that would be most beneficial in my opinion.
Can you hear me?
I would just add that I'm happy to meet with her this spring, and if it makes sense and the board would like it, we could co-present to you a new timeline at a future board meeting, if that's the appropriate way. We could also submit it via Superintendent Upham for your review, and then simply move forward from there.
I think that sounds prudent, yeah. I don't want to overcomplicate it at all. I'm sure you guys can come together on that. Does that work for you?
I'm Amanda Sear, for those of you that don't know me, but I would be happy to start that.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting because I can't hear you clearly. I hear a woman's voice.
That's Ms. Sear.
Maybe
Oh, great. Is it possible to get her a microphone?
yeah, maybe step to the microphone, Ms. Sear.
Nope, and then it's not on. I just turned it off, didn't I?
They're light on.
Hi, Heather. That's really bad, sorry.
I'm Sarah, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Greg had reached out that you guys were having this meeting tonight, so I was excited that I was able to make it, and I'm happy to start having a conversation with you and meet this spring to see if we can start this conversation. I don't feel like we need to start or wait until July. I can get moving as soon as we're ready to go. So you and I can coordinate with Greg on a time that maybe the three of us could meet first, just to kind of see where we're at with it and then go from there, if that works.
That sounds great.
If that sounds okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Nicole has a quick question. She's
Where do I find it?
Okay,
and it's done, so hold on 1 second.
okay, thanks, Betsy.
Hello?
Maybe switch mics real quick.
Hi, Hatton. This is Nicole, board member. I have a question. For our community, we've had to make some big cuts of some favored staff. And some of the community members might see this as an adding to our debt. With your strategic planning, is it going to be worth the expenditure, and is that something you can help us with, our budget? Getting staff, restaffed, coordinating, getting everything in line, getting funds together.
I certainly appreciate that right now is a very hard time, and we're hoping that, the proposals in the state legislature are gonna help all school districts with their budgets and paying staff. I want to acknowledge that an investment in this is certainly an investment in the school district and for future success. And that is a really challenging decision to make when you're also facing staff cuts. There's no easy way to say, hey, how can this expenditure be worth it when you're holding it up against a staff member, a treasured staff member who we've just lost. That is simply the hard challenge of the situation. What I think you're going to get in terms of value from this work is helping you as a community address what are your community members really looking for from your school, and that may help you address these 50 students that are not attending the Alberton School District. That's the quickest way to accomplish a revenue gain, is getting students back into the building. In terms of helping you address your budget and the debt issue in another way, I think I have a question for you. It's my understanding that you would not be funding this through any sort of debt, like a levy or a bond measure. You would be funding this through some existing one-time only funds. So I wasn't aware that engaging with me would require incurring debt to pay for my contract.
No, that just
Am I-
makes sense. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. I want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly.
No, you are. It just hasn't been explained to the community just yet, all the funding. I just wanted to.
Oh, right. And
Right
so
now,
some,
Sorry. Right now, they're sitting there like they're getting more of our school money. So I just wanted to see if the budget could be something that you'd address.
absolutely. So looking at the existing budget is part of the process, and it certainly will be part of the conversation. I love to suggest that we have some presentations about what the budget is and what it could be and where some of the obstacles are in the existing budget. And that's something that I can partner with Superintendent Sear and Chair Fredette and Ms. Wood to help develop for you. There's a separate component of my proposal, which is just helping with some communication services. And that's really a separate thing from doing strategic planning. But if we find that this is a fruitful relationship, and there are things that I can do to help from just a strategic communications perspective, I am available to do that, and that is an expertise of mine and a service of my business. I think for those members of the community that are in attendance tonight, I want to acknowledge your critical thinking is accurate. If you're wondering how are we experiencing staff cuts, as well as experiencing what I understand is probably budget negotiations with your teachers union, as well as considering a new contract. The way that I would frame it as an external consultant would be, you're in a real strategic moment where the school district has to decide, what are we doing in the next 10 years and how do we get there? And if you continue with current practices, you may continue to experience the same budget concerns you're having right now. So the investment in a strategic planning process, especially with someone like me, who's used to getting diverse voices in the conversation and a wide variety of ideas and concerns, the benefit of doing that is you're uncovering what your key obstacles are and what's possible to resolve those. And without an investment in that process, I think I would be concerned that you may continue to have lack of community engagement and potentially, and there's not a lot that I understand just yet about dramatic influxes of funds for you, but without examining why you were losing those students to other school districts, I think you're going to continue with similar budget concerns.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Fredette, if I can address some of the whys, I think it's a great question to ask, and let's talk about the budget first. So in a situation like this, there's an account in the school district called the interlocal agreement, which at the end of a school year, any funds that remain can be placed in there. Prior to that happening, everything had to be spent, and so it's considered one-time only. And these are the types of projects that you use one-time onlys for. You can, but you never should pay for staffing or any ongoing costs out of a one-time. And so this is a project that would be paid from one-time onlys out of the interlocal. Can do that. There's enough funds in there to do that. So that's the funding source of it. And my challenge to Alberton is this: you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So you're going to have to go after the revenue creation that's designed to help schools. One is the total number of students attending. We need to find out why students are choosing not to come here. That's a fact. We need to ask ourselves a question, it's going to come up later in the meeting, is why haven't we ran mill levies, which is 20% of the funding? That's a fair question, because that funding, once it's approved, is in perpetuity as long as the enrollment stays the same or grows. So if the board chooses to run the levy this spring, it's $47,000. That's $47,000 that the school district acquires from now until eternity, as long as enrollment stays the same or grows. And then you can apply for another operational levy when there's more available. So you see that Frenchtown is running a levy for about $500,000. That's a lot. And I'm assuming that they have to have it or they're going to lose staff like crazy. Same story you're hearing in Kalispell and what you saw in Missoula and those types of situations. So Alberton is no different. So as a community, that needs to be talked about, because you just can't go out and say you need to approve this now without having a conversation. So I need to know why, right? So that's part of this. This addresses the why. Recruitment and retainment of staff is difficult now and will become more difficult. And so what can we do in the future to make sure that we recruit, attract, and retain staff? And what I've heard with the turnover of superintendents that you've had in the past multiple years, leadership, has led to some of these issues. I don't think intentionally, but unintentionally, when you get that level and that frequency of turnover, you're going to have issues. And part of what we dealt with the reduction of staff is part of that situation. And so, in looking to the future, you're asking yourselves the question, okay, what can we expect in the future? We're going to see growth in the Missoula County area. Can we capture those people? And if we can capture those, how do we do that? Because that's a revenue generator. Every student that comes to school at Alberton is revenue. Now, are they more important than money? Right, I'm not saying that. But from a business perspective, you're trying to increase your enrollment. So, those are some big items. And until you find out why people are choosing to go down the road for a variety of reasons, or maybe we're not offering something, or whatever it is, you need to find out what's happening with that. And that's only going to happen by doing surveys. The other major issue that we're dealing with is the facilities. It's old. And we'll have McKinstry here tonight talk about some high-level pieces, so you have that later. So I'm going to say this again. You can't keep doing the same things and expect a different result. You're going to have to address these issues. And this is a prime time. I really feel like you have a very talented staff here. That's a big plus. And I say that with confidence. There are very, very good educators here. And so you want to make sure that you hang on to them, because on the other side of this, when I talked about in last Monday's meeting about the academic achievement and the challenges of the percentage of students not meeting grade level benchmarks when they're supposed to, that has to improve. In this school district, that has to improve. And so that's just part of this whole piece here with a strategic plan to identify what the priorities are, what we know what the needs are, and then how do we capture what's actually happening in the future. And what's actually happening in the future is there's continued growth, right? So how do you do that? And what do we need to do to make sure we capture that? And so one of the benefits, and I'm not trying to sell Hatton, but one of the benefits that Hatton brings to the table is school experience, for one, Missoula County Public Schools. So when you talk about levies, you talk about bonds, you talk about all those things, this person has that experience. And then secondly, she has the knowledge of Missoula County and the growth that's occurring there. So those are some of why it fits and why we were talking about different things. Because if the Y is projected to grow like it's going to grow, then do the kids just all go to Frenchtown and pretty soon Alberton becomes part of Frenchtown? I mean, it's a fair question, right? And so I think that's what you're trying to find out, but you're also trying to establish and build a relationship within your community that when you go for the ask, you're not just showing up when you need money. That's important. And the levy is very, very simple. It's not much. It's the old cup of coffee type conversation. It's a tough tax situation we're in because of property taxes. But what's coming is a bond. That has to happen. These buildings are old, right? And the bonding capacity for Alberton is $12 million. Well, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but $12 million doesn't go very far. And we have some ADA issues and things like that. So I personally don't know how you can't do this, because I don't know when you are going to do it. Because you're going to have to at some point in time. Otherwise, you're going to get the same results doing the same things. And I say that with passion because I see the need in the community. I see it. There's a lot of our kids and a lot of our families that need this school. They absolutely need it. They need the breakfast. They need the lunch. They need the hug from the teacher. They need the hug from the cook. Seriously. I mean, I think sometimes we lose sight of the obvious, that what is a school and what does it do? And so that's where the passion comes from. The kids in this community need the school. And it's time to step up because you haven't passed a levy in how long? The facility hasn't been upgraded in how long? And I'm not saying that to chastise you. I'm just giving you facts. So if not now, then when? Right? It's okay, now what? Then what? Right? And so even though it is a difficult time, because we just reduced FTE because we have a budget issue that's attached to COVID, used one-time only funds for that, we've been down that road, okay, we've learned from it. So now it's time to move forward. And so I just want to restate the why and the simple facts about why this is important, because I do think, and I'll close with this, I do think for the most part, with all of the issues that are attacking public education, we forgot about the little kid in a community who this may be his or hers only positive in a day, that hopefully when they're 16, 17, and 18, we have a productive citizen. We've lost sight of that. And there are more challenges with families now than I've ever seen in my 38 or 39 years. It's unbelievable what we're seeing. So if we don't have this, and we haven't prioritized this, then they'll go that way or that way, further away from here. And the other part of this that frustrates me about the thought of consolidating, because it makes business sense to do that, but that is in Montana. Montana is small towns. We can't lose sight of what our DNA is. We're a small town state. We choose to live in small towns. We might have to pay a little more for it, but you're choosing to live in a smaller community, otherwise you'd be living in Missoula. Right? So, I think sometimes you just have to state the obvious. Community needs a school, kids need the school, and we have to work to improve it to the best of our ability in a challenging environment. So, I just think about that.
Thanks for that, Superintendent Book. Do we have any more conversation pieces, any other questions? Sir.
I would prefer that we listen to the McKin Street people so that we know what we're facing financially to do a facility review. Because if we cannot do both of them, my concern would be we need to make sure this building isn't going to fall down on the kid's head next year before we worry about the very, very important strategic planning. This is not a vote against this proposal. It's just saying, let's see the whole picture before we start cutting the pie.
Absolutely. Well, let's table discussion item A for the next few minutes and move on to B, which is the facility review with Mr. Bob McKinstry. Bob Moore. That's not right. Bob Moore from McKinstry.
Yeah, Patton, I think we're okay. If we let Patton go, can we let Patton go?
Fine there.
Unless you want to stay on.
No, I'm here. I'm actually just gonna try and listen, and if I am unable to hear it, I'll drop off. Thanks, Betsy.
Guys, if you can use a microphone, and then maybe you can just get down on your knees.
Pat and I have one of those voices that carries very well, so if you want me to speak up, let me know.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
clutch works on it. There it is. There it is, okay.
Good evening, I'm Bob Moore, and I'm an account executive with McKinstry, and Jeff Davis is with me tonight. Jeff is one of our engineers. For those of you who don't know, McKinstry is a national company that works in the design, build, construction, energy performance, contracting areas, and we have 3 offices in Montana. We have a Missoula office with about 15 people in it. We have a Bozeman office with 8 people and a Billings office with 2 people. So we work throughout the state, and Greg contacted us and asked us to come in, take a look, give you some ideas about facilities, which are obviously a very important part of any strategic plan. The students are the key part of the school, but you have to have a place for students to go and to learn. And I'm a retired school administrator. Most recently, I was the superintendent in Stevensville, retired several years ago. 30 years in school administration in Montana, so I kind of have a foot in 2 worlds, if you will. I'll give a 10,000 foot view of what we offer and what we can do, and Jeff will go more into details of the report that we completed. Jeff and Phil Farrell, one of our engineers out of the Missoula office, and myself visited the school about 2 weeks ago and turned over all the stones, went through the closets, looked at everything we could look at. Just at no cost to the school district. We know money's tight. We wanted to come out and just give you a 20,000, 30,000 foot view, if you would, of what we see as obstacles and things you need to look at as a school district. McKinstry, while we are a construction company and manage construction through design build process, which, the nice thing about our process is it's a guaranteed price. We don't do change orders. If we say we're going to do something for $500,000, we do it for $500,000. If it costs us $550,000, we don't change order that. We eat the extra cost. And so schools are more and more looking to contain costs and not have cost escalation in their construction and renovation projects. And so we use a progressive design build where we would come into a school district and do an evaluation. We have a technical services side, and we have our construction side, if you will. And what we would offer the school district is kind of if you will, you can pick and choose. Our initial view of your buildings, we see some problems that need to be looked at and addressed in the short term, and again, Jeff will get into those. But we would have a contract, or recommend a contract for some pretty serious investigation of your buildings at this point in time. Your HVAC, your mechanical systems, your structural systems in the buildings. Jeff will discuss a couple of structural things. There have been some improvements made. We found some HVAC improvements, and your boiler is not aging out. There were some concerns brought up the last time I was here about the boiler. I had our service representative stop by, and he seems pretty confident in your system. The only problem we have is if that system goes down, there is no redundancy in this building. You have a boiler. There are some systems in the high school portion across the street that we weren't really able to discern the age because they're stacked into the ceiling, and Jeff will cover some of that as well. But our recommendation would be that if you were to work with McKinstry, let us hold a contract where we would come in, look at your mechanical systems, look at your building systems, look at your structural systems, get structural engineers, mechanical engineers, get an architect on board, and really look at the safety and well-being of your buildings. That is of paramount importance. What's that going to cost? Again, it's how you select from the menu. Our technical service side, the larger tabloid sheet that I handed out to you, if our engineer came out of the Missoula office, Kirk Hines, he would come in and assess every piece of equipment that you have in your building. If you think about it from a perspective of, take the educational pieces out of your building and start looking at the boilers, the water heaters, the controls, all of those systems that are mechanical and HVAC oriented, those type of things. That's what our technical services side does. And we come in, we age those systems, we look at life expectancy, we look at how well they were maintained, and say, this has a 30-year life expectancy, it's been maintained very well, maybe your life expectancy is 40 years. If you have something that hasn't been maintained, there's concern about some scaling thing in your steam pipes. How long is that going to last? You know, we can't predict some of those things, but we know looking at a boiler that's supposed to be a 30-year life cycle, you're 20 years into life cycle, you have 10 years left, it's maintained well, you might stretch it if you maintain it. If you don't maintain it or do the things you're supposed to do with preventative maintenance, it might shorten it by 5 years. And here's the cost in real dollars, and then there are multipliers on that. So if you can say, all right, it's a $250,000 boiler just for the piece of equipment, you can put an inflationary index on that thing of 5%, 10%, and it gives you a capital plan that you can use for strategic planning as far as moving forward and saying we need X number of dollars on an annual basis to maintain the capital equipment and this building at a level that's acceptable for education for our students. On top of that, then you have our structural evaluation. We would contract for a structural engineer. Our mechanical engineers would come in and make recommendations with what we call a FID list. And those are your rank order things that here is the first thing that's likely to fail. Here's the second thing that's likely to fail. Here are the mission critical things that you have to have. You have to have heat. You have to have electricity. We look at those mission critical items and what is the life expectancy, and are they at a point where they need to be replaced now, next year, 5 years, or 10 years down the road. So it kind of depends. Last time I was here, I probably took all of the air out of the room when I started talking pricing. But when you look at something like that, if you were to have both our technical services evaluate all of your equipment and have us come in, evaluate your structural portions of your building, your mechanical, your panels, your boilers, all of those things, your windows, your building envelope, your roof systems, all of those things, we would come through and look at that. How do you pin down something when you have a menu to choose from? $30,000 to $50,000. That's just real dollars. You can scale that back and say, well, we want you to look at just the building envelope and do the mechanical side. We'll not worry about a technical service set and not worry about the equipment. I wouldn't recommend that, but those are the type of things we do. You want to add to that, Jeff? That's kind of the 10,000 foot view of jump in anytime.
Yeah, Bob's kind of stole my thunder. I will add a little bit. Facilities plan to follow up a strategic plan is pretty important. You talked about recruiting, retaining teachers and students, and facilities play a big role in that. I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody, but we came through and just spent a couple hours. Myself, I'm a mechanical engineer with facilities background, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. So we came through and looked at the building. As you know, this building is about 100 years old, right? So we've got a lot of problems here. The other building, the high school, is about 60 years old. Neither one has had anything in the way of significant upgrades in that time. A little bit of lighting upgrades, etc. But I'll just run through I don't want to read the report, and I think this will probably become available to everybody, but I'll just give you kind of the highlights. Basically, of aging and wear and tear of systems, finishes, the look and feel of the building, floors and stairways that are sagging and not supported properly. The exterior siding, soffits have a lot of damage and repair. A lot of that is just painting and visual, but it needs to be done. We didn't get a chance to get up on the roof, but it's very likely the roof is in poor shape, needs to have something done with that. The windows have pretty much most been upgraded to double pane windows, so that's a good thing. We suspect there's asbestos containing materials throughout. The school's done a good job having the reports done, and they're all the ACMs are confined and not causing a problem. They're not airborne, but they would have to be abated if you did a major project. ADA efficiencies, interior and exterior, is a whole bunch of ADA deficiencies that need to be addressed in terms of access, stairways, restrooms, etc. Building code egress, the length of corridors and the number of doors and stairways. That's out of my area of expertise. That would be an architect to bring in to help. Structurally, we're seeing this building is probably an unreinforced masonry structure. We would have to bring in a structural engineer to evaluate that, but that would probably need extensive reinforcement. And then the mechanical system, the current boiler is fine. It's got several years of life left, but it is a single boiler, and there's no redundancy in that. There's no natural gas in the town, so everything is on fuel oil. If you were to upgrade the heating system, it'd be really good to look at a heat pump system. You've got good electrical service throughout the building. We didn't get into the details of the piping, but this age of building, usually the piping has been corroded, compromised, and would probably, the heating water would have to be replaced. The radiators, this building's heated with a mixture of radiators and unit ventilators. There's no mechanical ventilation system in this building, so there's really no means to introduce fresh air into the building in accordance with building codes. No air conditioning. We noted a whole bunch of window shakers that get brought in when it gets hot out to cool the building. Electrically, you do have a good electrical service because it was all heated electrically at one time. The T8 lighting has been some of it's been upgraded to LED, but need to finish that. And then a lot of the lighting fixtures are just dated. No, they've been broken or cracked, don't have covers. So that's kind of just a quick overview. It's just got some wear and tear that needs some TLC. And in terms of strategic planning, facilities planning is a big part of that. The first step is to know where you're at before you know where you're going. So this facilities condition assessment would baseline where you're at with all your systems and equipment and what you need to do to improve that. And then the next decision, I think, that's hit upon is really repair versus replace. When you start looking at 100-year-old buildings, the cost to repair and refurbish might be better to rebuild, right? And that's not cheap either. So some of those are the big decisions that the district is facing.
We'll field questions. Jeff will field questions.
I'd just like to say thank you for this. It's very informative, scary, but informative.
Yeah, it's something you have to see. To know where you're going, you gotta know where your starting point is, right?
And I will tell you and thank Jeff. I didn't have to twist his arm very hard. I said, look, this school district doesn't have a lot of money. Can we just go out there and do this? And he and Phil both volunteered and came out and spent time out here. So
I do appreciate that.
It's hard to understand fully where to go from here. I heard everything you said, and I think that we have to do everything that is specifically relevant. I think that's a starting point, right? Like when you talk about picking and choosing off of an a la carte menu, we can't write a blank check. And so I don't even know where we would start. Do we agree to move forward with McKinstry and then you guys work on that?
term that we use, it's warm, safe, and dry. And so you always work to be warm, safe, and dry initially, and then you extend out. And so, you know, the items that have been brought up, they're bond type items. I mean, there may be some quick fixes, but in order to pass a bond, you're going to have to build a relationship with the community as far as why do we need a bond, even if the bond is, you know, approved or whatever in a levy. So I think it would be my suggestion that we move forward with the strategic plan and we open up conversations with McKinstry as far as warm, safe, and dry, and what type of fees they may be looking at in the future. Because as you listed the 30 to 50,000, I can't see that. I don't see that for this district. I mean, unless you're successful in bond. There has to be something less on the a la carte that lets us see warm, safe, and dry, and gives us a window into what, you know, the future looks like. So.
Mr. Hatton has a comment, I think.
Okay.
Are you there, Hatton?
Yes, ma'am, are you? I didn't want to break in at the wrong time.
Go for it.
I just wanted to, I heard Superintendent Upham's prior comments and these comments just now, and I wanted to just share with you from my experience. You know, I was part of the community effort and the school district effort to pass the 2015 bonds for Missoula County. And those still stand as the largest bonds ever passed for a school district in our state. That was a 2-year process building up to that, and we still barely passed those bonds. But I want to reinforce what Superintendent Upham is trying to convey to you, that if you know you're going to need mill levy support and bond support, you cannot underestimate how long it takes to really engage with your community, not just share with your community an educational campaign and say, why do we need this money and what's it going to pay for, but deeply explain to them, here's what we learned from McKinstry, this is what our building needs to meet these basic warm, safe, and dry standards. And then here's what we need phase 2 to actually get to where we want to go. But I want to underscore for you how long that takes to build that connection and that understanding of the why with your community. I know it's a really challenging decision you have to make with a limited amount of one-time only funds, and you'll make the best decision. But I wanted to give you my insight from my experience of how long it takes and the kind of deep engagement it takes to get your residents and your taxpayers to understand your why and why you need this support from them.
And I will concur with Hatton on that. It's having run the large bond in Stevensville, which was nowhere close to what they did in Missoula. It's an educational process. It takes a lot of school board work, administrative work, and education in the community. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's, you know, we can help with bond planning and we can help with community. It's just, again, it's what do you want to choose off the menu? What level do you want to spend? And the warm, safe, and dry, we can do warm, safe, and dry. It's going to be different than handing you a sheet that says, here's the life expectancy of your equipment through our technical services group. But that's all part of a picture that at some point in time, you as a school district have to have. That's one of the pieces that I was missing in every school district I work in, is trying to prevent well, this died and I need $500,000 to replace the boiler when you walk through the door, which I did in Stevensville. The first year there, I walked through the door and they said, this boiler will not make it through the winter. What are you going to do? And I hired McKinstry to replace the boiler. So there's the triage, there's the warm, safe, and dry. There's what level do you want to escalate to? And I fully understand where you are. We fully understand where you are fiscally.
we can work with your administration to figure something out.
I was just wondering too, like, when you're talking about Warren Sacred Drive, to looking at, things where we would like kill, multiple birds with one stone, like with the heat pump, that's also gonna provide some circulation and some cooling, right? Like, I mean, I'm not
Yeah, you
an expert,
can
but I
put
know
cooling coils into it, yeah.
when you brought up like the boiler has a little bit extra time, like we could ride that out longer, but if we added a heat pump in, that's maybe like solving some of the other problems that are necessary. Cause having worked in the school, like it sucks when it's hot. I'll just say that. So, I mean, that's
It
just
would
one
be
example,
a systemic building-wide solution.
Yeah.
You can't take a school like this with its age and multiple spaces and systems and piecemeal it. The system needs to be updated.
But just maybe helping us figure out like how we can triage things
Sure.
based on stuff that would
Well.
address more problems.
Yeah, there are some current lack of really good temperature controls, as I'm sure you've all experienced. And those are simply triage, and we could come in and try to Band-Aid those and spend a little money now just to get you by until you can pass a bond, certainly, but the system approach is to what we would be after.
I'd like to. So last weekend, we had a meeting with a significant portion of the community center. We talked about grants for the school on there. And I think for the community to assist at large, outside of bonding and levies, kind of need to know what our target goals are on there too. So within reason of, with this a la carte menu, I mean, there's a grant, for example, from the Montana State Department of Commerce that's for $500,000, but we're gonna have to kick in $100,000 on top of that. That I would imagine would go a significant way towards moving things forward as well, but I guess, yes, Warm, Safe, and Dry, but we do need to have that a la carte big so that we know what to ask for. Otherwise, we're just throwing darts.
Well, I want to
Yeah.
clarify, make sure we're not talking apples and oranges. I mean, the first step that needs to be done is assess your current situation, right? Where are you? And that's an inventory of all your equipment, your finishes, your systems in the building, and identifying the condition, what it would cost to renovate and fix, and what it would cost to replace. That's the study, the 30,000 or 50,000. We don't know what it is. It's man hours. It's labor. We get engineers and architects to come in and walk the building and put the reports together, and that's what that is. Then the other piece of fix, once you decide whether you're going to renovate or build new, that's the bond, and that's where you need the condition assessment and the first step in order to educate your taxpayers and your community members and everybody else, and decide on a path forward.
So I guess my question is, Superintendent, are we looking for a Warm, Safe, and Dry prior to that, or are we looking for, these are at the same point?
Well, I think what we would want to know is what, Warm, Safe, and Dry gets us started. I don't know what that costs to get Warm, Safe, and Dry. You're not going to fix the building until you get the bond. And so sequentially, you have to start the conversations with the community at the same time, paralleling what the needs of the building are. So I see it in tandem. And basically what it comes down to is how much information can we afford from McKinstry in conjunction with what's the strategic plan going to cost. So we have the amount from the strategic plan, right? So we know what that is. We don't know what the facility is and what it's going to give us. And so I don't think you can afford the full-blown assessment, facility assessment at this time. You can in the future if you get a bond passed. decision.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm gonna touch on what we talked about last weekend, at our community meetup. The only way that we can go forward on writing and helping with grants is understanding this piece. We have to have this information to be able to submit the grant. So that's just a statement, however you guys take it, but that is the case of writing the grants. We have to know what we're asking for.
Go ahead.
$169.
And so, I don't remember exactly how much the strategic plan would take from that, how much would you have left?
Roughly 142.
What?
After, should we vote to accept the contract?
So just a comment, I feel like it's important to, if you do go the building route, to also make sure that you're trying to get that bond to fix that specifically. Because I don't want it to be obsolete, 5 years down the road, that you did this assessment, but nothing was really done because the money wasn't there. Kind of like, I know you guys mentioned there was a blueprint done for the gym at one point that was never done because it couldn't be afforded. But money was spent to do that for that process. So that's just something inside to.
Well, and I think that was actually done, the bond was floated and it failed.
So that's the other piece of it, is if you put this money into it. It sounds like you guys do far in the future, well, not far, but like some that wouldn't become obsolete right away.
Well, we'll identify facilities improvement measures. It's really hard to say, here's a facilities improvement measure. We know that a rough order of magnitude cost today is this much money. And 2 months down the road, tariffs or whatever happen. It's really hard for us to say, this is good for more than 30, 60, 90 days. And then when you get years delay, and we see this all the time, we're working with a school district right now that delayed 2 years, and from pricing and increases and just labor increases, it was in about a year and a half time, about 25% increase. So the facilities improvement measures wouldn't change, but the prices are going to move according to our economy.
It sounds like what we need to do though is like get the ball rolling with getting the information, however that happens, so that we can get the grants. And also, and correct me if I'm wrong with the bond, it's like that's getting a group of us in the community to go around and essentially sell this to the community, right? Like make sure that our community is educated, which it sounds like you participate in, right? It's making sure that we're getting the right information to everybody so
Right.
they understand why they need to vote on it.
And we're working with another school district right now
Yeah.
on bond services. We're going to the Women's Club meeting, we're going to the Chamber of Commerce, we're going to those meetings. And it's, again, it's man hours. And so you say, look, we want you to attend 3 community meetings and it's 3 hours, and can we use somebody out of the Missoula office? Or do you need to bring Jeff from the Bozeman office? Those are different man hours and different costs. And so we can put a proposal to say, okay, we can look at it architecturally, structurally, stop me when I go awry here,
Okay, so, no, I do want to clarify though, a facilities condition assessment is an initial step, and a bond planning effort, in order to go out for a bond, and you're probably better to explain this to me, you have to have enough definition around your project and your pricing that goes into the bond language from a legal standpoint. So there's more work to be done between this step we're on right now, this baby step, and then a bond planning effort, which would be down the road. And Hatton may speak to that better than I.
Before we go off, any further down that road, I want to clarify that, major, if not the major player, and then, if we decide to move forward with Hatton too, she is a very significant partner in all of this as well. So that's kind of where that approach goes.
Hi, I'm Molly Davidson here, and I guess I'm seeing a critical need for both of these elements. I'm helping out with the grants as well. I'm also an engineer, so I apologize. But I feel like for the grants, a critical component is that strategic aspect of understanding your vision and path. And so I guess my question to the board and to the superintendent is there a budget to do both at this time?
There is.
And is that something we could consider doing?
Absolutely, yeah, that's what we're gonna discuss. John, what do you have?
Just curious, it sounds like what you guys are offering is an opportunity to get into a contract with you without really knowing what it is that you're gonna do for us and what it's gonna cost. I didn't have the luxury of whatever information you gave them, but, you know, in the construction industry, competition is pretty important because it keeps prices, you know, fair and market value. Nothing against you guys, but if we enter into a contract with you, then we don't even have the opportunity to, you know, get, you know, cost estimates from other construction companies. Would that be what you guys would require as a contract?
Well, go ahead. Yeah, we came here tonight only not to try to be selected to do additional work. We came here tonight to present the findings of our quick initial building investigation, right? If the district would like us to give them a proposal for some additional work, we'll do that, and the district would be right to go solicit proposals from others, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there a hand up over here? No. Oh, it's you.
It seems like this is something that we have to do, need to do. Is there a way that we can agree to move forward to look into what we need and do pick and choose a price range that we're comfortable with? Mr. Upham leading that, or is that?
Yeah, yeah, of course, we can do that.
And then have more of a narrow down price, if that's what we're worried about.
165.
I have a question. So if we decide to, approve both and everything, and it sounds like we should just seriously look into bonding as well as this levy. Now, everything is a big what if, of course, with levies and bonding, but what is, communicating with the community look like for us? Is it gonna be just board meetings, or should we plan, okay, we're having a community get together at the community center or here in the school, because we're gonna start talking about bonding and what we need done with the school for our future. I mean, what are your ideas on that? Anybody?
Sure, and I think that's where the strategic plan comes in. I think the planning and how to communicate with the constituency and the community to begin this, to tell the story.
I think we need to start communicating with the community what this says. This says we need to do something. And the sooner we start getting the whole community involved, the best. That will mean board members and volunteers, if people want to be involved, meeting with every club, every organization that serves people in the district. Just to let them know there will be a bond issue coming up in a year or two, and here's why we need it. Here's what we're hoping to get done. We know we need it. My reaction is, just this much tells me we need to build a new building if it's feasible. feasible, then we need to explain to people, beginning right now, why we're gonna spend a huge sum of money getting this building accessible.
Again, I would consider my suggestion, I'm not gonna say it's a recommendation, but my suggestion is that we move forward with the strategic plan. That gives us the venue to tell the story. And then we open up the facility review for what we need. We look at, bids, we look at what proposals are brought forward for the facilities, and then agree to what that's gonna be, and then move forward from there. But I'm a little cautious. I agree with one of the comments about, do you need to do both? Yes, you do. To what degree do you need to do both? Eventually you're going to need to do the whole thing, right? The interlocal has 169 in it. When you're dealing with facilities of this age and issues that can happen, I get nervous if there isn't a fairly large sum of money that's we have access to today. We just had to dig up a sewer line by the high school. I don't know what that costs, but so financially, can we do it? Probably. But again, and so to be honest, I'm more conservative. So I get nervous when you use one-time onlys, because you get them one time only. That's the term. But we're designed for projects like this. We're going to have to tell the story, because when you look at this big picture, I'm going to ask the question, why have we not run levies for how many years? Why have we not improved the building through previous bonds? You don't have to answer that, but
I can tell you what I was told by the board when proposed moving the shop up by the gym and expanding the gymnasium, dressing room. It would not pass, so we won't even run it. That was the attitude of the board. I suspect that's been the attitude of the board for many years. We need to work to change it.
which is the strategic plan. So I think that's the car, knowing that you're going to have to shell out some real money for the facility review, and you can't wait very long to do that. It's just a fact, just where we are. So say it out loud, it's what it is, and move forward. Just a suggestion. I'm just a retired superintendent who's really thirsty.
I would like to provide just a small amount of probably insignificant background on that interlocal agreement. We only started that interlocal agreement 3 years ago. Karina and I were on the board that did it at that time. And at the time we started with that, it was just Clinton and Bonner that were part of that interlocal agreement. And as of this year, I think probably 15 or 20 more schools have jumped in on that interlocal agreement with us. But in that time, in that short amount of time, we've been able to put away $169,000. Were we lucky? Yeah. There was a lot of grant money out there that we're never going to see again. That we were able to put that money away for something like this, and we never could foresee what it was that we would be asked to spend this money on. But now that I'm sitting here, it makes sense. I think that with money like this, you have to pick value-based purchases. You have to build up your supplies. You have to be able to pick up that really cool tool when it goes on sale. You have to have that opportunity, even if it just sits on the shelf for a couple of years. And I think that this is something that it speaks to me as the ultimate value-based purchase. And once it's done, it's done. And if we try to do it again next year, it's only going to be more money. You know, everybody in this room knows that that's just how things go, and that's especially how things are going right now. And so, we are all elected here, and I think that, in my time, I think that my vote in favor of both of these ventures is going to either make or break my legacy, but, I don't think that, I don't think we can afford to be stagnant as a board anymore. It's just the way it goes. But that's what I especially want you to know about that interlocal agreement is that, that we did do that. And, by golly, we can't take it with us when we die. So, this makes a lot of sense to me. Do we have any more comments?
Would it be feasible to ask Mr. Upham to confer with Bob there to, I guess it's, what's the minimum we need right now to give us a quotation on doing something like that? I understand your reluctance to cut that down too much. So, Paul. Right.
Good.
Paul.
I was wondering, is there a reason that they couldn't split the grade school and the high school is in that round building is about as worthless as they come. It's just not really work. You and I have had discussions on it. Is it, because we know that's got electric furnaces, this has a boiler. It's, we were all through that building when we wired the internet in there, and I can tell you things that probably you guys haven't even come across there, underneath the buildings and the things that are underneath the whole school. Just but is there a way that a reason that you couldn't split? Well, this is more important. The kids are younger here than the high school kids, and that building is kind of poorly designed for education. And in my opinion, I'm not a deal, but is there a reason that you couldn't do that?
Are you asking if we could do one and not the other, or?
Yeah, I guess that's the.
Certainly.
Sure.
It's the district's.
It's your
wishes,
call.
yeah.
It's Greg's comment of warm, safe, and dry. We can do warm, safe, and dry. We can do warm, safe, and dry, and here's capital planning on top of it. It's, absolutely. Greg and I can get on the phone with Jeff, and we can have a conference call and put something together, and here's the criteria we want. We need an architect because we want to know that the building is going to stand. We want to know that the elementary building is safe to be in. We want this, we want this. We pull the team together. We put a proposal together. If Greg wants to farm that out and say, okay, here's your price, yeah, absolutely.
Is why I even bring this up was quite a few years ago, when my kids were going to school here, they weren't doing fire drills, and they're required a certain amount of the year. So I got in a fight with the school, and they had the state building inspector wanted to block off the egress area, and fire marshal trumped building codes, and we sprinkled the bottom half in the
Yes.
boiler room, which is, I don't know if you know, all the basement,
We've been
which
through
to
it,
me
yeah.
was the most important. They stubbed the pipe up here, they're gonna have to go waterless here and underneath the gym, and it stopped. They paid for all the plans, and I don't know where that is. We tunneled did a pipe push underneath there, and in that underground tunnel there, you see this giant pipe to sprinkle this, basically was there to sprinkle the school. And then after I got transferred, and then it just kind of died on the vine. And that's what I'm kind of concerned about, is that, hey, my mother used to tell me the road to hell was paved with good intentions. And that's, I don't say, hey, I need to do this. The windows, they had extra money, and they did the windows. We tried to run a levy to build a new school over there by the deal, and that went down like I figured I'd been gut shot, but I couldn't get any support in the local community about it. I've been a lot of these paths, that's why.
Yeah,
Let's not reinvent the wheel.
And part of it is that decision of renovation versus, where is your breaking point? And can you afford new? And $12 million doesn't go very far anymore. Greg is right.
I agree.
Yeah, John.
I'm sure you guys would agree that you're probably not gonna find very many architects that aren't gonna argue that, the renovation of whatever's gonna be needed to make this place safe is gonna outweigh the costs, or it's not gonna be any cheaper than building a new facility. I mean, it's just how it works when we deal with buildings that are 100 years old and older. Keep hearing warm, safe, and dry. They looked at, and we appreciate you guys coming out and inspecting, the boiler system. That's good, the electrical system's good, and it didn't get on the list. I'm not really for sure about dry yet, so I'm just curious what we're gonna get into for a contract for obligation without really knowing what we're buying, That's my biggest concern, is getting into a contract and spending a big chunk of money, only to basically be told, hey, it's gonna cost more to do this renovation than it would be to knock the building down and build a new one. Just my concerns.
Yeah, I think we have to find that out. Because we don't know, we don't have any ways to find out except for guys like this.
Correct.
Yeah. And that was kind of our talk, like we sat here that night, I think when the discussion led to this kind of moment where we were like, shoot, we kind of have to do this. Like, I mean, whether it's, with these guys or whoever, but we're like, man, how could we don't know we don't have any of these answers to these questions that are so obvious. If this was your house, you tell me what's up, but here we are, and it's just.
You make a really good point. I mean, how much money does the district want to pay to determine something that's already known, right? I mean, and that's your guys' call. If you know this is 100 years, I mean, the biggest concern for me is structural, I would say right now. The architectural, the spaces, the programming can be modified to some degree, but structurally, if this building is not sound or not per existing seismic codes, it's gonna be inordinately expensive to remediate that. So if you know that already, we don't wanna spend your money to tell you that. So I don't know if I have
very nice about
dog and.
saying that directly, you kind of skated around the fact it's probably gonna cost more to do this renovation.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that, and we don't really have a dog in the fight, but I kind of think maybe you go ahead with the strategic plan. The facilities plan is an important part of that. It kind of follows. I don't think it's bad to defer that a little bit, I guess.
Or minimally, we need this. This is,
Well, I think what's gonna happen is, so by law, by statute, you're required that anything that's $80,000 and over to take out to bid. So from the business perspective. Now, I haven't read every policy that Alberton has, and I don't know if there's a lower threshold than that. But I see in the future that we're gonna have to hire a consultant of some kind, whether that be McKinstry or something, that's gonna guide that global discussion. To say, because at some point in time in the near future, you're gonna have to have a complete review, facility review. And, McKinstry's one of the businesses that does that. There are other businesses that do that, and it's at the discretion of the board. If it's under 80,000, they don't have to take it out to bid. I'm not saying that's the wisest decision, but I just want to make sure that we get the facts out. So at some point in time, you're going to have a comprehensive review. But the cost to repair the comprehensive review will have to be a bond. That's real money. And so just so if something went bad right now, what access to funds does Alberton have? We have the interlocal. We can't say that there's anything in the general fund that we could do. Maybe a little bit, but not much when it comes to facility. And we have our reserves. And I don't know what that total is in the reserves. You have it off the top of your head?
It's over 100.
Okay, so school districts can carry up to 10% of their operating budget in their reserves. And normally, best practice, the school district never touches their reserves unless the roof blows off or the boiler goes out. You never, it's not an accessible fund. You don't even think about it. And this building is old, so I would always be hedging on making sure that that stays for the facility. And when the full review is done, it's going to exceed any liquid funds that we have by probably tenfold, which is then going to be a bond, which then once the review is in place, full facility review, take it out to bid, ask for people to come in and look at this and see what that's going to cost. That's good business. It's then that you have that information that you take that starts the bond campaign to say this, but you need to begin to build a relationship with the community because you haven't passed a levy for however many years. So I see this conversation in parallel. I see the superintendent and trustees meeting with people and saying, we need to start with the levy. That's an operational levy, but please know that there's a bond following this as we continue our discussions about the quality of the building of our school. And or you ask an honest question in all of this. Are you willing to support the school at the level that it needs to be supported at this point in time? I mean, it's kind of put up or shut up, right? I mean, it just is. So there needs to be an extensive facility done. It's going to take real money to do that, to fix that. Not the study itself, but what the study says it needs to be done, then it needs to be done. So it's kind of like, be careful what you ask for. But you can't stick your head in the sand. It's time.
And that's why a lot of this felt like a leap of faith at the time, because we were like, well, what if they come through and they shut us down? Right? We all just kind of got white face at that point, and we're like, oh man. But, so we want these folks to come in, I mean, when it does happen, obviously, when school is done, and our hope is that if there's like any kind of like red flag issues, that, they can be taken care of over the summertime, and, but like that's just the reality of where we are. So, and I don't want to overstate what the superintendent Upland has said, but yeah, we are in no position whatsoever to do anything, maybe more than something like a roof repair, like the liquid funds on hand, like, yeah, they're pretty low.
But we have to ask the questions and know the answers with some certainty, because otherwise we're throwing good money after back, I think. So I feel like we have to ask these questions.
Yes.
I just know you mentioned the word asbestos, and that would have to be mitigated if it was worked on. So with that, is that a restraint that it can be done during summertime when students aren't here, or is that possible to do that type of work? while students are attending?
It depends on where it is. All schools of this old have asbestos somewhere, like it's in the tiles. But it's what's called encapsulated, so it doesn't create a hazard at all to be maintained in place. And that's what's typically done until the time comes where you do a major project that interrupts that or stirs up that asbestos. Like piping is a good example. Sometimes it's on the piping insulation, and if you were to replace that piping, you would have to mitigate the asbestos as part of that project. Is that your question, or?
And to take it a step further, there are protocols and isolation and things like that, and it's generally not done when students are around.
Correct.
And so I did a lot of it in the Stevensville project. Hired a professional company out of Billings, double wall plastic, positive air pressure, air testing when they were done with mitigation. They were running around in suits and things like that, and we just, there was nobody in the building when that was done.
So does that add a lot to the cost usually?
It depends. It does add, not necessarily a huge amount, you know, we've seen it on small mechanical projects of, you know, it's hard to answer, it really depends.
I have a comment to that.
Okay.
I was here when they replaced the boiler down in the boiler room. I don't remember how old it was. The asbestos abatement just for that room cost more than the boiler.
Well, there's your answer, it can be expensive.
John, did you have something?
I was just, not for you guys, but I'm concerned that maybe we're putting the cart before the horse here with the real problems that the school might have. I mean, the Bulwark scale says that the national average student cost for a school is like $18,600 in Montana, $17,700. That's based on primary school average student population per class of 26.6 and secondary 22.3. I'm not for sure what Alberton has, but I know my son goes to 7th grade here. I think there's 13 kids in his grade. So, I mean, financially, does the school generate enough money to sustain itself off of its numbers that it has in enrollment? Because I made a comment on social media about, you know, the 50 students that are outside the district that we had to pay this year, and it's like $350,000. Technically, Alberton's been using money that it had no cost in for however long for those students that have gone there, and now they have to pay them, right or wrong, but that's the reality of the financial shortcomings, is that we're no longer going to be able to use money that we probably shouldn't have been getting all along. Can we increase our class sizes to meet the financial needs to sustain a school district?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent. Those students, how that is funded is via permissive levy, and the state levies that money whether you vote on it or not. So it's already happening. Like, you're paying those taxes, and I am, and everybody else, and it's already going that way. It wasn't coming here in the first place, but now it's going there.
Yeah, they're taking it out of our tax base, so it's actually your tax money that's paying Frenchtown. My tax money, all of our tax money is paying Frenchtown or Superior, wherever these kids are going.
Okay.
But you did reference the $350K, and where that comes, that was money that had never come to us. But technically, for the purpose of this conversation, we're gonna call those our kids. So our kids are going to a different school, and because of that, those other schools are getting that roughly $8,000 that goes into our budget per child student, which that is what equates to about $350,000. So it's money that we never had, we never saw, and that's actually specifically it's money that we're trying to do. Yeah, that's what we feel that that's one area where we feel that the strategic planning can benefit us. I don't, but I say that understanding that there are reasons that those families send their children elsewhere, and I don't want to think that I don't want to project that I somehow know something or aim to figure something out that's going to bring them back. But if we can, that's where we really need the help and do the work to do that.
Just my perspective, if we're going to do a community outreach thing, most of the people of Alberton, the pillars of the community, been here for years longer than me, obviously, they see the strengths of Alberton as what all the people that don't go here see as weaknesses. So you're going to try and mix oil and water, you know, and I'm worried about that as well, just to be honest and open with you guys.
No, I mean, that's I think where the relationship piece comes in. You know, my wife and I would fight, like, you know what I mean? Like, but it works so beautifully, and that's what we aim to create. And also, we believe that there are things that this school can offer the community that it doesn't currently offer them. We believe that we can probably do some of those things, and we can build around those ideas when we're creating this relationship. And so I think that's part of the strategic planning too. Like, we really need to kind of come together, and we need to feed Hatton, and we need to feed Ms. Sear, and just say, like, this is the direction that we want to move in going forward. And we understand that it shouldn't look like it does right now. So we've got a lot of talk and all these things, and you're one, your number's sitting on my phone right now, like I want to sit down and talk with you, and but coming together with folks and letting people know, like, this is what we see, this is what we want to offer you, is there anything else you're thinking about, and figuring out how we can build that relationship, because yeah, it's not like just, we have this disposable income laying around. So we need to make it valuable for the community, and we need to evolve with times and all that stuff. Yeah, there's so much that we're thinking about here.
So you say next year we're gonna pay another $350,000 if we don't draw any of those 50 students back? Is that how that works?
So what we're paying, if you will, or losing out of that tax base is about roughly $1,000 per student. So what we're losing out of our tax base is about $50K. What we are saying is that next year, if these 50 kids go out of district, we will not get that $350,000 in our general A&B budget, if you will. Yeah.
And that's not unique to us. If you read I don't know if any of you read the article that was posted there about Frenchtown, they're also losing 50 kids out of district to elsewhere. So the challenge is, it's not necessarily, the greatest thing isn't 15 miles up the road, because somebody there also thinks that is not the greatest thing. And they're choosing to send some of their kids go here, but a lot go to Missoula or elsewhere. So the challenges are everywhere.
And I'd like to add a personal thought to that. I think last year we started hearing things about Frenchtown that, for better or for worse, they were just going to cause that school to lose students. And we were really hopeful that some of that was going to come our way. And, you know, I was talking about this week, and I was like, yeah, I guess those people are just taking their kids to Missoula, because they're probably going to Missoula too. And what we want to be able to do is provide services and to provide a product that make people consider us. And that's where I'm trying to use the verbiage as often as I can. We have to be as relevant as we possibly can. We have to be. And again, it's not some plastic promise that we're looking for, like just give us some money. It's what can we build here? Seriously, what can we build here? We think it can be something excellent. We have pieces in place in our faculty that they make us fortunate to have, and we feel like we can build around those pieces to create something very relevant. And it's just going to take time. It's going to take time for you to believe that. It's going to take time to understand that. But so long as we are the board, we will do that. And I think that goes to what you said earlier. We don't want to just pay for some stuff that sits on the shelf too. I have to clean out my refrigerator like every month and it goes with mine. I spent money on all that. We don't want to do that. Yeah, that's not where we're going.
I want to comment that I think one of the most positive factors of Alberton is that our students aren't a number. From personal experience, when my kids went to Potomac and then to Bonner, smaller schools, and then when my daughter ended up going to high school and having to go to Hellgate High School, she was a number. It took the whole year until spring break for a principal to reach out to me and say, do you know your daughter missed this many days? I was never notified that she was skipping classes or anything. She was just a number. And I honestly feel that our students here are not a number. Teachers seriously care about the students. The cook ladies seriously care about the students. And that is one big factor, and that's something that some parents aren't going to figure out, that have their students going elsewhere, that they're not going to realize until they experience, like I experienced it, that my kid was just a number. I hear weekly of things going on with my son, and he needs to prove here and stuff, and he would have never got that if he was going to a bigger school. Probably wouldn't get that if he was going to Frenchtown. I'm just saying that's one of the biggest positives of this school.
Yes,
I'm new here, so this might have been said in the past, but you mentioned briefly if we had this assessment and they find something to kind of shut us down and not allow us in the building, what is our backup plan in case things get delayed and school starts? Because I think that we should have a solid plan in place if we're going to move forward with that, instead of hitting that roadblock and kind of being like, what do we do?
that remains to be seen. And I think that's a lot of that, just kind of behind the scenes work that, we do. We have those conversations, and so we will have to enter this know, and at the end of the day, you know, I mean, I don't know, my simple mind as I sit up here, I can think of like, you know, pulling some double wides into the parking lot or something really crude like that, you know, but, we don't even know what that looks like, and so I think that we have to, you know, we have to figure that out, and then we have to look at the answer if it's, we've got no plan, and we have to decide, you know, I mean, what can we do? So, that's a lot of the, that was a lot of that, I guess, the reality of that conversation that we had, and we kind of got to this place where we're like, man, we kind of have to do that. We really want to do these other things over here, they're so shiny and fun, but like, really the work is, and what we're talking about right now, the impossible decisions. Yeah.
So let's say we get a number, like what it's gonna take to get the facility up and running and acceptable, whatever you wanna call it. And we decide that, hey, do we really wanna do that? Maybe we should build a new building. Is that something you guys help with, or do we end up having to go a whole new route and getting like an architecture and all that stuff to give us a quote of what we're looking at for building a new facility?
Well, we can invite businesses in to say, listen, we want proposals on what the facility review is gonna cost and what you can provide to us. Entry's been in good nature, come in and just take a look. So that's what we would do. We would put it out there. If what I'm hearing with the board and with the community, what I'm hearing is that you're ready to spend some money on a facility review, then the best thing to do is to put the proposals out and say, we want a complete facility review. And as McKinstry has said, you're probably looking at 30 to 50,000 in that range for a full warm, safe, and dry would be the immediate, knowing that upon a full review, then I can't look into the future, but I can just surmise that you're looking at bond type numbers for that level of repair, which you're going to have to know. But you're also going to have, it's old enough that you need to get something now. You need to be able to see if there's any warm, safe, and dry issues. And so
30 to 50 would get us a recipe for like the entire holiday meal. We still have to go buy this stuff. And I think that's kind of like what that looks like. Fair, right?
Yep.
And so I don't want to blur the lines between any of this, so like 30 to 50 is just gonna kind of get us to the front door. And that's where that bond comes in, but that's the information we need, whether we're speaking with the community about a bond, or whether we're speaking with the grant writing community that we're engaging with at this point. You know, this is all the information, I think, that recipe type information that we have to have. And we have to do it. I mean, quite frankly, this hasn't been said yet, but all this other small town stuff that we're talking about, I think a lot of that too includes like conversations, eye-to-eye conversations, handshakes, trust, kind of all that stuff that maybe, you know, I mean, you lose it in a small town, don't get me wrong, but you know, I mean, you lose it at a greater rate the further one moves from Albertson, Montana, frankly. And so I like Mr. Moore. You're all right too. You're just the first time I've met you, but I like Mr. Moore, and I want to work with people I feel good about. And I like Mr. Moore because he was a lifelong superintendent, and then he got into this business. And a lot of what he brings into this business is that empathy that he gained, the empathy and wisdom that he gained from doing the job every day. He's a Montana guy. He does get it. I know he's referenced several times, kind of our budgetary realities. And in this preliminary stage, I really appreciate all that. It doesn't mean that I'm just gonna, that we would get just hooked into them for every bid moving forward. But in the now, I feel pretty comfortable that these are folks that we can work with because they'll work with us. I do believe that. And if they make me suckers, then that's just, you know, another step in life, but I truly do believe it. Okay. Sir.
Are you actually asking one of the board members to make a motion that we go for the 30, 50,000, whatever you said that was the?
I would, but reservation that I have for that level of commitment at this point is listening to Superintendent Hubbell. And so what I would conjure up in my brain would be a motion for Superintendent Upham and McKinstry to work together to come up with a specific bid that would facilitate a mixture of what we need to feel safe and comfortable, but also maybe what they think that we really need to do, kind of that advice from our parents that we never want to listen to. That kind of stuff where you could come in and say, okay, I hear you want this, but we saw this too, and we really think that that's something that you need to go forward with. And so that's a pipe dream, but maybe we can make it happen.
And it would be a defined scope. It's not gonna be a blank check. It's, you know, here's what Greg and myself and Jeff talked about. And again, I've been in that chair and I know what that interlocal fund is all about. And I fully empathize with you lose a boiler or you lose a roof. That's your only ace in the hole. I totally get it.
How do you feel about this, Superintendent Upham?
Fine, other than a good point was brought up. When you start talking about those kinds of dollars, you know, in fairness to business, are there other companies out there that this becomes a competitive proposal? Like I said, state statute says 80,000 and over is a must by law, out for bid. It's at your discretion that McKinstry is the business, and I'm not anti-McKinstry. That's not what I'm saying here. But it's just something to consider. I'm completely comfortable with it. So.
Yes.
So it was mentioned that there's a decent possibility to do renovations and everything might be even more expensive than just doing a new building. For that, and you had mentioned that you think there could be structural issues, and I feel like once you start talking about the structure and the foundation, you're talking like big dollars. Is it possible to start like with that stage before you even do other stuff to see like that alone? What you'd be looking at, and then at that point you could take it to bonding, the verbiage of the structure is gonna be this much. Let's just.
I would answer, yeah, we could do the structural assessment first to give an indication of what that would take, and then follow up with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, because if the structure's good, you can always redo the interior, but if the structure's bad, that's something you wanna know, so that's a good thought. And when we, I guess, I mean, we're happy to sit down with the district and Mr. Upham and put together a proposal of what you want and what we would propose to do and what it costs, and you can pick from there.
I move that we ask Superintendent Upham to work with the McKinstry representatives to come up with a proposal for making a preliminary, or I guess facility review, so that we know what we're looking at, so that we can make a decision on whether or not we want to move forward. If we don't have a strategic plan here, we're, again, throwing a bit in the dark.
We do have a first and a second to move forward with Superintendent Upham and McKinstry for developing a bid and plan for moving forward with a facilities assessment that is appropriate for Alberton schools at this time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those who oppose? Okay. to accept a proposal for a strategic plan that was presented by Ms. Matthew Lippman and her company, Surf HF. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those who oppose? Wonderful. Okay. So moving on to our last discussion item. This is a spring levy. So as we've discussed, so first of all, I guess the levy is part of that. So let me just see if I can recap this from the beginning. A school is allotted a budget, and we're going to call that 100%. So this money over here is 100% of the school needs to operate. That would be to cover facilities, that would be to cover salary, that would be to cover anything that blows down the road, papers, markers, chalk, you name it. So the state says, and this is for everybody, it's not just Alberton, the state says, okay, there's your 100%, you get 80. You want that other 20%, you need to go out and talk to the people in your community. And so that's a levy. We did vote back in February to move forward with exploring the levy. And I think we have had community discussions in the meantime. We have drawn a levy, we call it an assessment, from the county. And our levy capacity at this time is 47,000 and change. $47,000. That money would come to us in perpetuity as long as we are still standing and have the enrollment as it is at this point. So, do we have any discussion on this? Would you like to say?
You might want to just loop back where we sit, talking about the 80%, and the state says you can go up to 100. When Ms. Littman did her initial analysis, effectively losing 50 students out of district, that a loss of A and B money is a further reduction of roughly 20% of our budget. So, as I understand it, we're running this district on 60% rather than 80%. So we are already fighting with both hands behind our back. And while the levy is not enough to cover a full-time employee, it is the right step forward to see if this community cares enough to support this and move forward, because this isn't going to be the first ask. There will be more. There's going to be bond coming down, regardless, whether it's this building or a new building. And if this is how we're going to initially engage the community and see where we stand. Because if we go down, we pass it with 10%, I think the community is spoken on the future of the school district. And that's not a good future, if that's how it's going to go. So we're either going to have to do a lot of work to build that up, or we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And this is a great test of that.
Yes.
When you say enrollment has to stay the same or go up, is that based on the now, or like when the levy passes at that point?
You can answer that. I think it would be when the levy passes. That's what makes sense in my mind, but I don't know.
If the levy passes, your next tax bill will go up. If you have $100,000 market value, they would go up approximately $13 for the year. $300,000, $39.69.
Was the question that when does it start?
No, about the enrollment of the students. So you said that enrollment at Alberton has to stay the same or go up.
It's the floating 80% question.
Yeah. So the term is budget authority. So based on your enrollment, the state says you have a budget authority of so much. So let's just say $1 million for simplicity. Based on our enrollment The state says your budget authority is $1 million, we'll give you 800,000. So if the next year that the enrollment drops, then it isn't in the levy amount, it's in your budget authority. They're not gonna take money away from you, but you're going to lose money because you're gonna have fewer students with your average number belonging. So the term that's used for a student is, as far as the funding part of it, is the letter A, small n, B. And what it stands for is average number belonging. And that's the term that's used for the enrollment. So you've heard us say A and B, average number belonging. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the other important piece of a levy, is once you pass the levy, that amount, as long as you stay even with enrollment or grow, you have that amount in perpetuity. You never have to ask for it again. That's why it's so dangerous not to ask for them. So every year that you did not run a levy, that you could have passed even for $20,000 30 years ago, you'd still have that $20,000 as long as your enrollment stayed or increased. So you should always ask for a levy if you possibly can, in good faith. And that's why that relationship with the community is so important. Now, these are the kinds of conversations that a strategic plan can have with the community, so everybody learns the issues. But I'm gonna throw this one out too, because what I've been frustrated with in the years that I've been in the business is, if you're in a community that always passes levies versus a community that never passes a levy, your children are disadvantaged. There's no doubt about it. And usually in the budgets where you see it take the hit is in curricular resources. So it's the curriculum that usually takes a hit in the school budget because it's not a person. So it's easy to say, we're not gonna buy those math books for another year, or another year. And it's the levies and the operational levies where that really fills that in. So they're a very important piece in the funding.
So, sorry, I'm still not clear. You pass a levy and you have that money in perpetuity, so long as your enrollment stays where it is or grows. What happens to those levy dollars when the enrollment drops below whatever level it was at when the levy was passed?
Okay, if you think of it, like I said, you have budget authority.
Okay.
So your budget authority drops. So
But that levy amount stays static.
it stays there, yeah, but your budget authority drops, and you're losing funding based on fewer students.
Okay.
So you probably couldn't run a levy again because you wouldn't be eligible for it. That makes sense?
But that's okay. I can learn more.
I know they made it simple for all of us.
Yeah.
If you're growing, the Montana school funding formula works. If you're static or you're dropping, it's extremely difficult.
Oh, no, and just to reiterate for probably the fourth time tonight, I mean, that's a huge role in the strategic planner, is to help us understand our growth potential and how to maintain it. And again, doing that, what we think is the right way, and that's going through the community. What are we gonna start?
My question, I have some issues with the numbers as well, because I still don't totally fully understand how the $350,000 that we had to pay before we recoup, the next year we would have to pay again. We're considering that as a 20%, because we're operating at 60% now, right? But you made the comment that we weren't ever getting that money anyways. When you call me, if you do, I hope that you have like a chalkboard or something. I'm more of a visual guy, I kind of like to see how that works.
I think the way to look at that 350 is, we all pay money to the state of Montana.
Correct.
Outside of the district, they take their cut. And then every year, the state takes everybody's tax dollars and they allot it. We're never seeing that 350. If we have those 50 students, the state of Montana, through the Department of Education or OPI, cuts us a check or electronic transfer for that 350,000. That's money in the state coffers that never make it to us. Is that correct?
Correct.
So We're all paying into that, not via like levies or all that, it's just your general income tax goes to the state. The state decides what pots it wants to put in. And there's a big pot that goes to schools, and in theory, if we had more students, that 350,000 would show up as a result of gaining those 50 students from the A and B money. So it's all theoretical money. It's real money someplace, but it's not, it's theoretical here.
Every kid has a little Velcro patch on their shirt, and it's $8,000.
Sure.
They walk in the front door, take off that patch, and you put it in your folder, and then you take it in to the clerk, and the clerk turns it into money.
Right.
So if those kids don't go to your school, you don't get to take that patch. And that's where we're losing $350,000. Somebody else is taking that patch.
But is that the 20% that you guys are considering you're not operating with because you don't get that now? That's what you're
So
saying?
we're saying that's fruit left on the tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so it's not real money, except that it is, and we're not getting it. But it was never money we had to spend in the first place. We're trying to get it. Yeah.
Who manages the state fund? Is that done through the county, or is that done locally? Like when they pay out OPI,
The what?
when they give you a check and stuff, OPI for each student?
Comes from the county.
It comes from the state.
Yeah.
But it comes from the state, but is that managed directly by the school, or does
County.
that run through the county?
The lump sum of money is the county. We deal, they're our bank.
Yeah,
So it's Mineral County that runs it, not Missoula, so you're both.
Yeah.
they're a bank active balance within every month.
Yes.
I just want to make a statement. I'm 100% behind you guys with the levy, and I will happily go out door to door. I'll happily put a sign in my yard. I will happily get behind you guys 100%.
Same. And I think that's important, because after the last meeting, I got kind of attacked. And it's important that people know that the facts are there, and they have to support it.
So is the strategy now to go out for an operational levy now, or is it better to wait? Okay.
As Pat said, I think that this is going to serve as a great marker. So we're going to put it on paper, we're going to stamp it, and we're going to know exactly where we stand, and then we're just going to keep trying. And we're going to try to build on the reasons that people support it or don't support it. So yeah, I think it's, personally, I think it's something that we need to pursue.
Actually, looking at the numbers of what we're gonna have taken out of our taxes, I was actually surprised by the minimum amount. I was thinking, our taxes are gonna go up hundreds, and it's not. And so that's something I hope we can communicate to the community, that it's not gonna be so awful. So.
Right, and I think those numbers will definitely be communicated, and just also want to reiterate what I said before, like we aim to tell nobody what a lot or a little bit of money is, because we know that's completely relative, definitely respect people and all that, for sure. So please understand that.
A very important part of this conversation, and it takes time to explain this, but it's really, really, really important, especially when you're introducing a levy or revenue that hasn't been done for a long time. So you can, in these campaigns, you can capture the heart. You can say, Alberton needs support, we need support. And in the explanation, the powers that be, trustees, superintendent, this is how schools are funded. So some people say, hey, you're asking me for money again? What? You just asked me last year or 2 years ago, what'd you do with that money? And so a negative starts to build because they think that they gave you the money and you didn't use it the way you should have. You spent it and you didn't use it the way you should have. The fact is, the way this funding mechanism in Montana is designed is that's part of it. That's your revenue from the state. Every year you get 80% of your budget authority from the state, and you generate the additional 20% from your local community, quote, skin in the game, local control. And so it's the funding system. It isn't that I'm asking you and I didn't spend your money well. It's just part of the system. That makes sense? The other really important part in the future, when you start having bond discussions, there are no mechanisms in the state of Montana other than the building reserve levy that you can float, which you don't have a building reserve levy, I don't think, do you? Okay. There is no mechanism in the state of Montana for facilities. So you can operate year to year to year, but there's no parallel or side funding source that says every 10 years, Alberton, here's $5 million from the state of Montana to apply directly to your facilities. The only mechanism for facilities other than the building reserve, which you can levy, but it's not really, building reserve is really a warm, safe, and dry. It's not structural, it's not those types of things. So another part of the frustration when you begin these conversations is people are going to say, well, what in the heck have you been doing with the money we've been giving you for your facility? Haven't you been taking care of it? Where are you coming to me now? What have you done? The funding stream does not allow for major capital improvements. The only funding stream in the state of Montana for major capital improvements is a bond. In other states, there are other funding mechanisms where the state will kick in a certain portion, might maybe meet you halfway on the bond. So if you raise $2 million, they'll kick in $2 million. But Montana doesn't have that. And so when you begin the process of asking for the revenue that's designed in the state, you need to understand very clearly. So when you go out, we go out and we say, okay, this is an operational levy. What's it for? Well, it's to operate the school. Well, how come you don't hire a music teacher with it? Well, we could potentially increase staff with it if it stays at a certain level, but you never want to earmark it for one specific thing, because as soon as it drops and you have to cut, then the community says, we just gave you enough for that. What did you do with your money? So you see, and this is, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not in a drama production here, I've just lived it. And so this is an operational levy to operate the school district at its maximum capacity by law from the state of Montana. We've been operating less than that because we've been too afraid to go out and ask. So people truly, I can't explain that enough. It's not, we're not misspending the dollars, it's how the system's designed. Local control, 20%. Community next to us passes their levies every time, and all of a sudden they got a better bus, or they've got those kinds of things, which shows up. There's no doubt about it. It's fact. So be very specific when people are asking about, questions about an operational levy. This is referred to as an operational levy that we operate the school district on for this year and the years in the front. And we'll come back and ask again when our budget authority allows us to ask.
Well, I think it's important to know, just like your household budget, things get more expensive and you have to go back to the well. Sometimes you get a raise, you take a side job, this is effectively that side job. The alternative that people seem to float are, well, we can do a charter model, we'll do it cheaper. My kids came from a charter school. That district demanded $1,500 per student just to stay above water. Can you imagine asking that in this community? Even a bond at their full capacity isn't that much. So, other solutions that are being we can't run a district off crowdsourcing. The state has made this model that it is via taxes, and that's how we keep the lights on and people here employed and teaching our kids.
And I think to kind of supplement what Superintendent Upham said, the other side of the coin is that you can go back in the ledger for 50 years and you can see that we've never wasted a penny of the taxpayer dollar because we never had it. We never had enough money to get to 100% of our budget. Never had it. So I think everything that we've got to this point, we've we've done the best we can, we've taken care of our stuff to the best that we possibly can, best of our abilities. We've never wasted that money, and it is actually written in the ledgers of everybody's title of the title company. It's written in there. We've never used that money, because we've never had it. It's fact. It's not even an arguable point.
I don't think you have to sell it to the people that are here. You have to sell it to grandpa and grandpa down at senior citizens.
My words, these are just coming off the heart, because I'm like realizing all of it. I think that this is a truly good thing. I believe it.
You need to start putting a writer like Paris here to work, but explaining that to the community. I mean, like I say, we're all, let's do it. But when it comes to vote, there was 17 when we started. Now there's 13. There's 7 of you people. And the other last meeting we had, the place was packed. And I don't see them today. So there's a few of them, but not like it was the other night. So I think, you know, it's one of these, my kid and I argue about this all the time, but it's you have to, you know, and when I was a military recruiter, we had an acronym with it, and it stood for what's in it for me. And that's what you have to tell the community is what is in it for you.
Yes. I'm excited to have those discussions.
I move that we ask the bodies what their
Second motion.
We have a first and a second to move forward with the spring levy by way of the ballot.
I would request too, Chairman Fredette, that you work with the community to find co-chairs for a campaign committee. And I'd like a male and a female co-chair, and then a committee. A committee of individuals who are gonna be the campaign committee that are gonna design the campaign for a successful levy. So, the board chair, in conjunction with the superintendent, usually go out and try to find community leaders that are willing to be chairman, that will stand in front of the community and begin the fundraising. There needs to be fundraising done immediately. The school district cannot spend any funds toward the election. My office can get factual information. This is the levy. This is the amount of the levy. This is what the impacts will be on a $300,000, $400,000 home. This is an operational levy, which we would use heat, you know, lights, books, all those types of things. I can print that, I can have that. But as far as vote for the levy, this is for our kids, this is Save Alberton, whatever the theme is, has to come from the trustees and the community and the committee. And that needs to be done yesterday at 9. So,
Ballots go out on April 15th.
pardon me?
Ballots go out on April 15th.
Ballots go out on April 15th.
It's the same ballot as the school board election.
And even though you guys, because you approved, she's not involved in this portion of it, she'll be coming after, correct?
It depends, I'm gonna look at the proposal again. I don't think it called for that, but this starts that conversation. So I'm gonna visit with her about what her thoughts are with that, because this is all, now it's very strategic. And there's a much bigger conversation than just the spring levy, right? We just had it. And so you wanna really think about how you wanna communicate with the constituents. This is an operational levy, you know, first time we ran it in a long time, but there's a much bigger conversation here. So we need to take the time that a strategic plan will be following. This is what we hope to glean from that strategic plan, you know, those kinds of conversations.
What about the engineers? How are they playing in? Are we just gonna kick the can or?
No, the board voted for me to work with them to establish a proposal.
Okay, we have first and a second to move forward with this spring levy, as proposed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose? Wonderful. Last chance for questions, comments? Yes.
Do we need to set up another meeting to set up these co-chairs and campaign committee?
That's separate from the board meeting.
So how do we communicate with each other if we can't really talk about?
Oh, you can, I mean, but the community is the one that has to have the chairs. And it's the chairman of the board that usually does some of that work, but the board can surely have another special meeting to talk about it.
That's any free time.
I will,
The co-chairs aren't.
Oh, I know. I just know if we need to have another meeting to help organize.
Well, we meet a couple of weeks anyway.
yeah, we'll have our next regular scheduled meeting. What I will do is get on the phone with Superintendent Upham tomorrow or whenever your schedule permits. And, I got a lot more. So we'll get that figured out, and I think, and I'll communicate with you guys the way that I always do. Send the same text to everybody individually. And, yeah, we'll make it happen.
With the co-chairs, there needs to be a secretary and a treasurer. This all has to be registered just like a campaign, just like an election. Okay?
I move we adjourn.
Excellent.
Second.
We have a first and a second to adjourn this here meeting. Everybody, excuse me, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Next regular board meeting, April 8th, 2025, right here. Thanks for all, everybody. Thank you, thank you.
I don't want to rush you out, but you also have to get our house at 8:30 to sign all this stuff. You here to drink? You're the most important.